This is the 411, your host, Matt Mika.
Talk about upset Saturday last weekend in college football. Matt and Mika here on the 411 to break it down. What happened? I don't think the entire country knows what was going on. It started on Thursday, Oregon losing to Arizona at Eugene. Huge win for the Wildcats. Then on Friday, it continued with Utah State beating BYU. And from then on, it was just a complete mess for teams in the top 10, teams in the top 25. Obviously, Alabama against Ole Miss, that was the big one. A&M losing to Mississippi State, that was another big one, especially how dominant Mississippi State was. USC losing to Arizona, UCLA falling to Utah. It was a crazy mix-up. Northwestern beating Wisconsin. It seemed like the entire college football rankings got mixed up, and it got shaken up tremendously. And right now, you could have a toss-up for who's going to go to the college football playoff. But right now, my top four, number one would be the Auburn Tigers. They look like the complete team, offense, special teams, defense. They are running over teams. They have a clear-cut path towards the national championship if they keep on steamrolling these opponents. Obviously, tough task next week against Mississippi State, but right now they look like the clear favorite. They are steamrolling through everyone. Number two, you have to give credit where credit is due. Florida State would be my number two team. Jimbo Fisher, what he's done with all the scrutiny, all the distractions with Jameis Winston. Granted, their wins aren't as impressive as they were last year, but they're still getting W's. So you have to give credit where credit is due. Defending national champions, I would put the Seminoles at number two. And obviously Jimbo Fisher winning his 50th career game last weekend. So Florida State number two. Number three, a lot of people are writing off Baylor, but I would put the Baylor Bears. They have done everything right. Preseason polls, they were ranked in the top 10, but people are kind of sliding them back with Ole Miss, Mississippi State, TCU. Teams are on the rise, but I was put the Baylor Bears in the number three spot. They've done everything right, like I mentioned. They have one of the best offenses. Granted, they played cupcake team so far. Their best win is a declining Texas team at Austin, but they're still getting W's, and I would put them at number three. Bryce Petty, still an incredible quarterback. Number one offense, number one team in the land for scoring points, number 8 in passing yards, and number 5 for allowing points. So they have a very good team in Baylor. So I'll put them in number 3. And then number 4, it's a toss-up. You can put Ole Miss, Mississippi State, TCU, Arizona, but I would personally pick Mississippi State. Why? Because they have 2 huge wins against LSU and then obviously last weekend against A&M. 2 big wins. LSU, they're not the same team as before. They're definitely not the same team, but winning in Death Valley, which is an extremely tough place to play, and getting a win there, and then coming back and having an incredible performance. Prescott had a huge day against A&M. 2 big wins. I would put the number 4 over Ole Miss, who's only had 1 big win against Alabama. And granted, Alabama is still Alabama, but granted, Nick Saban's crew, they're not the same team as years past. They're young, they're inexperienced. They're still getting W's except for last weekend, but they're inexperienced and they're not the same team. New offensive coordinator, so that's not as an impressive win as 2 back-to-back wins against A&M and LSU. So that's why I would put them over Ole Miss. I have Arizona in number 5 spot because what they did in Eugene, beating Oregon back-to-back years, revenge factor, and beating them the way they did in Eugene, I would actually have them over Ole Miss. They had an incredible performance on Thursday night. Everyone was watching, and they dominated a Oregon team. Granted, Oregon was depleted with their offensive line, but they put a huge game against the Ducks, and I would actually put them over Ole Miss. So that's my top 4. Prescott, Heisman candidate. If Prescott has a huge day this upcoming weekend against Auburn, I would actually put Prescott as the number 1 candidate, and you could pretty much give him the Heisman. Todd Gurley, number 2. He's having a great year, despite the fact that Georgia is kind of on the downslope of their dominance right now. So Todd Gurley, he would be my number 2 candidate, but if Prescott has another huge day against Auburn, I would give him the Heisman. He is a phenomenal football player. He's doing everything right. Throwing, running, dual threat quarterback. I would give the nod to Prescott. So that's my top 4. And number 5, and my Heisman pick for this week's college football analyst. But next week it's going to be completely different. Who knows what's going to happen? But that's the great thing about college football. And that wraps up this edition of the 411. I'm Matt Mika. We'll catch you tomorrow.